I'm a former CIA officer, National Security Council staffer, and diplomat. Ask me anything about Signalgate. Hi Reddit. I'm Ned Price, an intelligence and national security professional who spent more than a decade at the CIA, served at the White House's National Security Council, U.S. Department of State, and was the deputy to the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. My head exploded when I heard the Trump administration carelessly leaked classified information about a planned U.S. military operation against the Houthi terrorist group in Yemen. This was a massive national security breach that endangered the lives of U.S. troops. I'm sure you have questions about this Houthi PC small group and what this leak means for the safety and security of all Americans. I'm here to share my perspective, having handled classified materials at all levels of government and worked to protect the United States against adversaries. Ask me anything about Signalgate, but nothing classified of course. What are the standards about communicating between officials? I know Signal is clearly not the standard, but do the US use a specific thingy to a group chats like these? Or is it made always in person? There are ways for US officials to have secure exchanges, but none of them involve non-secure technology like Signal. For example, there are both secret level and top secret level phone lines for either one-on-one calls or conference calls. There are also separate secret and top secret level networks, which allow officials to email one another or even chat with another on an instant messenger-like platform. Of course, the most secure means of communicating is in person, which is why meetings of the so-called Principals Committee are always held in the White House Situation Room. If a principal, such as the Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense, happens to be traveling overseas, he or she can always join the discussion via secure video teleconference, which allows them to be beamed in on a top-secret network. Are there safety features built into these agencies to protect the country from the underqualified people appointed to run them? I really want to sleep at night knowing that there are some competent people still involved making sure the flames stay within the dumpster we call the cabinet. In practice, not really. Presidents have pretty wide latitude to appoint whomever they wish to their cabinet. The Senate is supposed to take seriously its obligation to provide advice and consent to the White House on these choices. But nearly all of Trump's nominees got through the GOP-controlled Senate, even if it took Vice President Vance to issue the tie-breaking vote to confirm Secretary Hegseth. The good news is that presidents appoint or nominate only about 4,000 individuals across the executive branch, whose ranks, if you include uniformed military, are in the millions. So, even if the hand-picked leaders at the top are generally lacking in credentials and experience, they will be surrounded by career professionals who will want to do right by the national security and foreign policy of the United States. Do you think the active CIA as well as FBI are in as lockstep with the current administration as it appears? It seems the current administration is allowed to circumvent laws, endanger national security and damage long-term relationships with our allies without a peep from those that I would assume rely on those relationships. Our career national security professionals, and I used to be one of them, are in a tough spot. They're where they are because they want nothing more than to do the work of protecting the country and advancing our interests. Rather than make that job easier, the chaotic, reckless, and dangerous way this administration has approached what should be the solemn business of our national security has only added more challenges to what are already some of the highest stress and highest stakes roles. Many will choose to stay where they are because they are dedicated patriots, but this administration will undoubtedly push out, by accident or design, countless professionals whose skills we need to protect and promote our interests around the world. But I can tell you with the utmost certainty that the administration is going to encounter resistance from career professionals in the face of efforts to mislead the public and skirt and even violate the law. These are people who, by and large, are devoted to the country, not to a political party or ideology. And, regardless of which side of the aisle you're on, that's a very good thing. It's been widely reported that a member of the chat was visiting the Kremlin when the chat was active. What's the beast and worst-case scenario given this piece of information? Beyond actively sharing the information, could the chats have been intercepted due to the recipient's location? I can't go into too much detail here, but, even if they can't crack the encryption, there are ways to gain access to the device that would allow an unauthorized user to access an app like Signal, thereby seeing all the messages. What impact do you see this having on other nations sharing intelligence with the US? Israel is stated to be very upset about this, and the EU didn't seem pleased with the way it was being discussed in the chat. How would the US go about correcting any issues with our allies after this? Edit. As an example, how do you see this impacting Five Eyes? I worry about this a lot. When it comes to intelligence sharing, trust is the coin of the realm. It's hard-earned and easily lost. I obviously can't speak to the details of what National Security Advisor Waltz and Secretary Hegseth shared in the chat, But there are reports that at least some of the information was derived from an Israeli source, in other words, a spy our Israeli partners had recruited. If true, this is someone who is risking his her life to help fight a brutal terrorist group, and now these top Trump administration officials have placed the source at greater risk by revealing details that might be able to help our adversaries piece together his her identity. So, yes, countries will grow wary of sharing intelligence with us if they don't think our senior leaders are able to protect it. I don't want to overstate the extent to which countries will curtail their cooperation. Our closest partners will continue to do so, in large part because they need us more than we need them. But there may be edge cases in which a foreign counterpart has an extremely sensitive source whose information they choose not to share with us. If that happens routinely, it will hamper our understanding of the threats we face. In your professional opinion, what is the chance that any of the participants will get convicted for attempting to circumvent the Presidential Records Act and/or the Federal Records Act for using Signal? Has anyone on this high level ever been successfully prosecuted for similar attempts to circumvent these laws? What would be the expected timeframe until the case works itself through the courts? Thanks. Given the damage to our national security this practice may have caused, I'm actually less worried about violations of the Presidential Records Act. But you're right that the records retention practices also probably ran afoul of the law. Will someone get charged on this basis? I think the odds are perhaps only slightly better than a snowball's on a hot day in the desert. I say that in large part because President Trump has stacked his cabinet with loyalists. He put them there precisely so that they will protect his interests above all. That, unfortunately, is clearly the case with the new FBI Director, Kash Patel, and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. I cannot envision either of these individuals launching an investigation into Signalgate, and, in fact, AG Bondi has said as much publicly. In terms of previous cases, the irony is that Trump himself previously was investigated for violations of the Presidential Records Act as part of the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. Ultimately, however, the charges didn't include reference to that statute. Just discovered Waltz and team have been using Gmail. What do you think of it with the Signalgate? How shambolic can our national security get? We really shouldn't be surprised at this latest revelation. The hypocrisy that Waltz and his colleagues have put on display in recent years when it comes to their purported concern for information security is pretty staggering. But this latest revelation does bring us back to what perhaps is the most concerning element of all of this. What else don't we know at this point? Are there other classified Signal chats? How else are they flouting policies and even laws when it comes to the protection of our national security? Is there any formal process whatsoever when it comes to the weighty decisions of national security? All of these questions are a good reminder of why we need to stay on this issue. We cannot give them a pass on Signalgate, just as we continue to search for answers on these broader questions. What does Musk visiting the CIA mean to you? How compromised is this administration? Where does the CIA fit into managing damage done to America by foreign and domestic enemies? I'm less concerned about his visit to the CIA and more worried about what may come of Doge's desire to gut the federal government, including our national security and foreign policy agencies. If his visit to the CIA convinces Musk and his team of the essential role it and its intelligence community counterparts play, that's a good thing. There surely are ways to make the intelligence community more efficient, but wholesale decimation is not one of them. The chat logs have been published already, so what section would fall under the classified category you mention? Classification can sometimes be more art than science, but there is no question that what Hegseth put into the chat about advanced timing, tactics, and targets is classified. The only real question is whether that information should have been considered top secret or secret. Whether it's the classification guidelines from the Department of Defense or the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, both would consider what he wrote classified. At the same time, even the policy discussion that VP Vance started with his skepticism, asking why we should be going after the Houthis now, would almost certainly be considered classified. It's precisely the type of back and forth that's supposed to take place in the White House Situation Room, not on Signal. Can you help us understand what would happen to an average CIA analyst caught in a similar scandal? What would the repercussions be there? It's pretty simple. He or she would almost certainly be disciplined and probably fired. Just ask the DHS employee who may lose their job after accidentally including a reporter on a chain about deportations. There's a double standard at play that applies a different set of rules to top administration officials than what our career professionals are subjected to. In your opinion, how much of this is sheer incompetence versus we want the bad guys to hear? I have no doubt that this wasn't intentional or some effort to play 4D chess. The use of this platform was nothing more than reckless, careless, dangerous, and also lazy. Think about it. Every single one of these principals has ready access to classified systems, at their residence, in the car, on their planes, and of course, in their offices. And, yet, they choose to use Signal for this highly sensitive discussion. There's no excuse for that.